Perfect.
There you go. You got it. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
As everybody knows, we're pleased to have Arlington County Board Vice Chair Libby Garvey joining us. And again, it's pretty short, but very, very sweet. Lots of information this evening. So we'll jump right into things.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear a little bit about for a minute or so about your time with the Peace Corps, actually. Yeah.
Right now?
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Went into the Peace Corps. Let's see. I got married the day after I graduated from college. My husband and I graduated, and a month later we were in the Cameroon and trained, and then we went to the Central African Republic. We were the second group of volunteers to go into the Central African Republic. My husband and I were the first volunteers in a town called Bambari. If you look on a lot of globes and you look at the Central African Republic, it's right in the middle of Africa, and Bambari is often on the map because there's nothing else around it. It's just a tiny, small town. That's where we were. Taught English there for 2 years, took one trip across West Africa to see his uncle, who was a Holy Cross brother in Liberia, and did that by bus and pirogue and other assorted ways of traveling, which was interesting. And it was a great experience for me. Central African Republic is unfortunately a very sad country. It used to be Ubangi Shari, and it's a French-speaking country. It has a native language, Sango, which is spoken throughout the country, which is unusual for Africa. Mostly Swahili is like that. It's a river language. So there's one language that everybody speaks. They usually speak their tribal language, Sango, maybe several tribal languages, maybe Arabic. There were a lot of Arab traders, and then they would learn French, and then they learn English, and I taught them English. We had textbooks from France, and the textbooks would start out saying, like the history textbooks in French, for those who speak, it would call Nos ancêtres les Gaulois, which is saying our ancestors, the Gauls. So here you are in the middle of Africa. And I was teaching things like arrival at Manderley Hall, which was from one of the, classic British writers. It was kind of crazy. It was fascinating. They're wonderful people. Unfortunately, the Wagner group is there right now, and Peace Corps has left for a while. I'm getting together for a reunion with some of my Peace Corps colleagues, and we sometimes get together and give money to groups that are working over there. That's more than you wanted, I bet, Alex.
That's amazing. No, I had idea of joining the Peace Corps after high school, but then I went to college. So I don't know, it's still in the cards for me. I'm still young, so we'll see.
Well, we can talk about, well, you may not know, Lillian Carter, who's Jimmy Carter's mother, went into the Peace Corps in her 60s.
Oh, wow. So there's plenty of time for me yet. Miss
Lillian, yes, she is. Google on her afterwards. She's an inspiration. Yeah, Miss Lillian. She's amazing.
She's been a resident of Arlington since 1977, elected to the Arlington County School Board in 1999, and matriculated up to the Arlington County Board in 2012, where you currently serve as vice chair.
Yep. And small correction, I actually came to Arlington in 1976 when we came back, but then I briefly went into Alexandria and we rented there for about 18 months and then came back.
Okay. Interesting.
And I got 2 kids, 2 girls, went through the schools. Anyway, there we go. And 5 grandchildren for those who are counting.
Wow, that's wonderful. And you have a long civic history, vice president of your civic association from 94 to 95, just before the year I was born in 96. And you were vice president you have a myriad of things on your resume. Vice president of the county council of PCAs from 93 to 95, and then of course matriculating up to the school board after that in 99, which is awesome. If you want to learn more about Libby and her extensive civic and political resume, check out libbygarvey.com.
And what's more interesting now, I think people want to look, are the regional groups that I'm part of, because that's more of my current life, which is interesting too. But that's for another time. Okay, there we go. Options, yes.
This is the latest and greatest options for expanded housing choice. Previous Moncure was missing middle. This is the new title, to my knowledge. And this was put together by Chairman Christian Dorsey, February 1st, 2023. So we'll jump into it slide by slide. Folks have questions. We'll do it forward slide by slide. And we want to try to keep things moving, keep it within an hour or so.
Yep. That sounds good. And Alex, can you see all the hands that would go up if they're questions, so you'll know? Because I don't see everybody. Will you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll let you.
Alex, sorry to interrupt you guys. There are more people on the Facebook invite that are looking for the Zoom link. So it might make sense to put it in chat over there.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. Okay, I can do that on my phone from here, so.
I can wait just a minute. That's fine. That's okay. Yeah, it's missing middle housing, also known as expanded housing options. All right.
Okay, let me just paste on the main Penrose Facebook page as well.
Yeah.
That will be good.
Are we like live streaming or something?
Yeah, I'm recording this as well.
Okay. Oh, I'll be careful. My cat may make an appearance. My cat has decided she likes Zoom and team meetings.
And missing middle. All right.
Well, it is actually just anything. As soon as I start doing this, she pops up, starts poking her head around. It makes it fun.
All right. Missing middle. Okay. Cool. So cool. Well, we can jump in and I'll be on my phone. If folks need it, they can text me directly.
Yeah, and we'll pause after each slide. The first slide, actually, I think we'll go through really quickly. Because that's just showing where it's applicable. There are a number of exceptions. One of them actually is right where I'm sitting now, because I'm in Fairlington, which is nothing but missing middle. Down in the corner, that gray part way down in the lower corner. The larger sites, the idea there is there may be some other things to do besides missing middle, and we want to keep options open. So that's one of the reasons that was off the table. And then places that are already got planning and stuff going on, we're not putting them as they list here. Not a whole lot of places, not a whole lot of properties. Okay, any questions on this particular one? I'm not so well versed on it because it's not a major issue.
Mhm.
All right, and we can come back. We can always come back. It looks like Terry has a question.
Sarah, you're still muted.
Yeah, you're muted. You're
Okay.
still,
Well, yeah, it says 136 properties, and that's across obviously a couple of areas. But for the corridor, like what type of properties are we talking about? Just a type.
okay, so I can't tell you. The thing is that they're in GLUP designated planning districts, and there are a whole lot of different ones. So, and this is not
Form-based
my
code, right?
forte.
Form-based code, is that what we're talking
Okay.
about? Okay.
Are we ready? Are there any questions on this slide, or can we go on to the next?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
All that yellow area.
Yeah.
Is that where you're planning to put these new town, whatever they are?
So
Duplex.
we're not putting anything anywhere. This is where it will apply. And if there's a homeowner there or an owner that wants to do that, this is where they're allowed to do it. They don't have to, they're not, it's not prohibited, which is the way it's been up until now.
Okay,
Okay. We're not putting anything anywhere. This is all just zoning to tell people what they can and can't do.
okay.
Okay.
Any questions pertaining to this slide of applicability?
Excuse me?
Any other
Yes.
questions? Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Laura, do you have a question? I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe I should say a little bit about where we are right now. Can you
Laura,
all
if you're
hear-
having audio issues, you can put your question in the chat too.
Laura, I just sent you a message there. So you feel free to text or type in your question in the chat.
Yeah, and we can come back. We can certainly come back. So we can move on. And if we need to come back for questions, fine. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, next slide. Turn my own page here. So this is the one where we took the 7 and 8s off the table. So we're not talking about them anymore. Now what's advertised is going up to 6 units per site, and the types that it included, which is listed here. Duplex and semi-detached dwellings. A duplex is considered something that's vertically stacked, not side by side. Side by side is called semi-detached. That's what I think of as a duplex. But that's what we're calling it. And then townhouses can have up to 3 units. So 3 townhouses in a little group together, or multifamily buildings up to 6 units. So that's the maximum. And then there's some more things that we're going to narrow down, but that's the maximum of what we're talking about. Okay.
Libby,
Yes.
okay, I guess my concern is, I really kind of get concerned because no one really kind of looks at the whole picture, because all of this stuff, it's like your infrastructure here, the parking issue, when you've got more people moving in, these are kids, okay? They've got kids. We have to school the kids. I know how packed the schools are because I work in one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
you know,
I am gonna get to that, and we do
Okay.
consider that. Is that okay?
Yep.
We will get to that some, okay? Yep,
okay.
and I
Libby,
understand that you're not the
if I-
first to voice those concerns. Yep.
Hey, Libby, so I'm a bit confused by definition. So when you say duplex, vertically stacked, we're talking about the, I guess, dictionary definition of duplex. So we're talking about 2 units only.
Yes,
This is not, and what's townhouses with 3 units?
townhouses mean 3 townhouses together, not more than 3, just 3 townhouses together.
Okay, because the way it reads, townhouses with 3 units means like 3 floors. It's a
Oh, I see what
multifamily
you're
at that
saying.
point.
No,
Yeah.
3 townhouses, 3 townhouses.
So, and
Um,
just to be clear, does this apply to new construction only, or conversions are included as well?
Both.
So
And what's
if you have like a house,
Yep.
and you want to turn it into a 3-level multifamily, that would be allowed.
Yes, provided you meet everything else that needs to be there. Yes.
Are there attached guidelines that are different than existing
There
guidelines?
will
for this?
there will be. It's like, there will be, obviously there's there's plumbing, there's access. You have to have a separate entrance. And we do have some design guidelines on where the entrances can be. That's not, I'm not covering that here, but that should be online if you want to find it. But there are some things about design guidelines. So it's not always as easy to retrofit, although I think a duplex is probably not as hard as some.
What is a the stacked units? What is
That
that?
means that it's basically one home is on the ground floor and one home is on the second floor.
Okay, so not more than 2 stories.
You probably could go up more, whatever it is within the, it's probably 3 stories. I think it's 35 feet is what we allow for a single family home. If you, within that height, you can do it.
Okay.
So
And all
below
these have
below grade is missing middle as well. It's including below grade. Units.
Yeah, below grade, you could have a base, so you could have one house that has the basement and the ground floor, and the other house and the other unit home has the floor above and a floor above that, as long as it's within that would be like a home that has the basement, the ground floor, second floor, and a 3rd floor, if it goes within the 35-foot height.
And we have a question from Laura. She was trying to ask earlier. She asked, in the current state of affairs, can these missing middle style properties be built now if you tear down a house or have a lot?
Not now, not in those areas, because right now you're only allowed to build a house that for 1 family. You're not allowed to build a house for 2, any more than 1. It has to be 1 family on. That's what's called single family zoning. So,
Is
and
that
that's
with
part of
the yellow?
it's very exclusionary.
Is that the yellow part?
Yes, that's most of the county.
Mhm.
It's like we can argue about exactly how much, but sort of 60-70% of the county land area is at this point zoned only for single family housing. Now, we did some accessory dwelling units that we allow. And that is allowed in there, but basically it's only for a single family home. And there are a lot of restrictions on accessory dwelling units.
And then Sarah, do you have a question? See your hands up.
Yeah, Libby, when you look at this vertically stacked, is that really limited to 2 units, or could you have a unit on the 1st floor, a unit on the 2nd floor, and a unit on the 3rd floor under the 35 feet?
Yes, you could. We're just talking about definitions. It wouldn't be a duplex then, it would be a triplex.
Okay, so there could be a triplex that's vertically stacked.
Yes. That's my understanding. It could be, I will say, Sarah, it could be that the restrictions we have on entrances, and I do not have all of the details here, the restrictions we have on entrances may make it hard to do three on top of, 3 stacked. There may be some things that would make that hard to do.
And Jackie, you had another question?
Yeah, I do. So if it's 3, whatever it is, they have to have completely different entries.
Or they're not separate units, right?
Well, if you said you have one in the basement, then you have one in the first
Well,
floor.
basement, well, what I was talking about the basement, I suppose you could have a separate unit with an entrance in the basement, in the district and
Yeah.
place you can establish basements, right? Where people you can enter on the
Right.
ground and go down, okay? Or
Okay.
what I was saying too is it could be that you have 2 levels for one home, the basement level and the ground level. Those are 2 floors for that home. I
Mhm.
live in Fairlington. There are a lot of apartments here that's that way. The ground floor and then there's a basement downstairs and all of that is one dwelling.
Okay.
With then an apartment above it. Mhm.
Okay, so, yeah, all right, so you're saying like the third level could be another apartment, you're saying,
Uh-huh.
separate entry?
Yeah.
Correct?
I think, yes. And I believe, there are some requirements on entries. I apologize. I'm not sure about what those are, but there will be some because there's some design. I don't believe, you can't have somebody going up 3 flights of stairs outside the house to get to the 3rd floor.
Wow,
I don't believe.
thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry, Libby, just, I don't want to go into too much details, but it is concerning as a builder myself.
Yep.
What's fire code for these like duplexes? Because
So I
that
don't
would
know what,
need
so
fire
fire,
barrier.
yeah, there are fire codes. So the wall in between has to be, I think fireproof. It's whatever it is now. Again, like I live in Fairlington and the units here we've got requirements, fire code that you've got to have for the kind of walls we have between units. And those would still apply.
Right,
Yeah,
but
I mean-
those are concrete block walls. We're talking about converting a home or building as like a single family home style home, and you have one floor with a kitchen under the other floor. That gets tricky.
Yes.
I mean, a bunch of them exist. My first apartment was a duplex up off of Langston back when it was called Lee. So if you want to see them, there are a bunch of duplexes over there where it's like one floor on top, another floor below it, and the shared basement.
I'm familiar with what a duplex looks like, but with the ones that are built as a duplex from the get-go, they have very stringent fire code. I just hope that, I'm just want to make sure the fire code is not being skimmed through as well.
Oh, no,
for
the
the sake
fire
of
marshal would
missing them.
never, no, the fire marshal would never let us do it. And that's probably going to be one of the things that's going to keep, I'm not expecting to see once we pass this zoning ordinance, I'm not expecting to see a whole lot. And that's one of the many reasons. This is not as simple and easy, it's got to meet all those requirements and codes.
Okay, last question for this slide, then we're gonna move on. We can come back. Jackie, your question.
Okay, oh my God, I'm having a senior moment here. Oh my God.
We can
just
come
went-
back. You
Yeah,
want?
okay, I'm sorry. Let's come back.
That's
Okay,
okay. You can put it in the chat or something. That's
Oh,
fine.
I know, I was gonna say, okay. So are
Okay.
we talking about making these rental units? Because I thought people wanted to buy. Because
So
what-
people do want to buy it when we're passing this is just saying what people can build. We're not saying if you can buy it or you can rent it. We're not allowed to do that. So all we're allowed by code to do is we've got setbacks and heights and things like that, but we can't say who can own it or sell or rent or whatever. We're not allowed to do that. So that's a question. And frankly, one of the reasons, which I'll talk about later, I'm planning to have regular reports on what's going on. And part of that is to see what happens, because I think some people who really like missing middle and want to have it think that it will mean there will be a lot more to buy and own. But I think in many cases, actually, it may not work out that way. They may end up being rental units and not that you can own. But nobody really knows.
Because we've got so many empty units in all these places around here anyway.
Empty units in what places?
Even in Penrose Squares, Sienna Park. And I'm sure there's plenty on the, on the, what do you call it? The Clarendon corridor. I mean, there's a lot of empty apartments.
That would surprise me. I have to ask staff. I don't think there are a lot of empty apartments because housing is pretty tight here. There are empty office buildings. Those there are.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Libby, I know we had last question, but is there any potential discussion of a ban for transient occupancy on units?
No, it wouldn't be any different than what we have right now for Airbnb. And I mean, we have a code on that. And there are restrictions on that. So it wouldn't be different. Okay. Now that we're really confusing, right? So this is what was sometimes called tiering, and Matt has been doing a lot of work on this. Can you go back to that chart thing? Yeah. I think where we are, I think we're probably going to land on 2C as the majority of the board being comfortable with that. I tend to be more comfortable with 2E and other people more comfortable with 2A. So 2A, the top allows a lot more. The minimum is pretty small, and so you can build 2 to 6 units a lot of places. Down at the bottom, 2E is like the fewest number of places you can build. You can build a six unit, 5 to 6, and 2C is the one in the middle, which has some limitations so that you can't build the larger units everywhere. Transit proximate, and that is a little bit looking at, how close is it to transit? People who want to be the most expansive are saying that anything within a half mile counts. I think the majority of myself and I think 2 other board members are thinking more transit is a quarter mile. And also particularly for the larger units, thinking transit means metro, rail, not bus. And so there's a lot of discussion about what is transit and what is proximate. It all boils down to how much we're going to limit the ability to build the larger units, the 5s and 6s. I think we'll come down in the middle, but I don't know. That one's going to be kind of up in the air at this moment. I may not know till we actually vote.
Go ahead, Terry. You're muted. There we go.
Yeah. Do people understand what R20, R10, R8, what that means? They might not.
Yes, we do.
Not really.
No, yeah, you do, Hassan, but other people might not. So these are zoning districts. R20 are when the lots are basically 20,000 square feet. It's 20,000 square feet. You tell me, Hassan, if I got it wrong. R10 is 10,000, 8 is 8,000, 6,000, 5,000. Now, in R5 districts, there can be 6 or 7,000 or 10,000, size lots. And in R20, sometimes they're smaller, but so there's some variation, but that's basically what is in that zone. So if you say that it has to be at least 10,000 square feet, look at like 2C under R5, probably in the R5 zoning districts, there are almost none that are that size. So the 5s and the 6s wouldn't qualify and couldn't be built. Same thing for R6s. So it depends what's going to be able to be built in what areas. I think, as you know, if you go up to North Arlington, they've got some really large lots. That's the R20. And if you come down here where I live, and I guess, and all of us live, there's smaller lots, much smaller.
Yeah.
Libby?
Yep.
Yeah, 2E, transit proximate, non-transit proximate. Is that the definition as described in the master transportation plan? Or
so it's in here, although I don't know if I have it on the slide. We've been discussing it. So as I was saying, some of us are saying transit proximate. Staff has said transit proximate means within a half mile of good transit, premium transit, which means a good bus line. I think Matt and Takis and I are at transit proximate means metro rail, not just bus lines, and also probably a quarter mile, not a half mile.
Now, for some area like Penrose and the Columbia Pike neighborhoods, so right now, although we have the buses on Columbia Pike, it is not a rapid bus. It is not premium.
Right.
Transit.
Well, it might be. Yep, and it will be sometime. And that depends on what we vote on what is going to be considered transit proximate. At the moment now, no, you're not.
So like the Pike neighborhoods would definitely prefer this 2E, right?
Yes, I think most neighborhoods would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Most neighborhoods would. The people who are really pro are up for the 2A, the most widely one. As I say, I think we're going to settle probably at something like 2C. I think that's where the majority of the votes are going to be. But I don't know. So
You were saying earlier that the majority of Penrose is R6. Is that correct?
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Hassan would know better than I. Yeah, Hassan.
there's a bit of a concern with the potential of 6 units in the R5 with a maximum of 5,000 square feet. Now, what I understand from this, that even, you know, a missing middle construction or project will be potentially eligible for zoning variances for setbacks. So I feel like, I mean, no offense, I feel like this is like the county is issuing a challenge for the craziest design, how to fit like 6 units on 5K square feet. Why isn't this more tiered than the, like, you know, with the transit proximity doesn't give you magical space to build anything that makes a lot of sense for our neighborhood? Like, we're talking about potentially somebody throwing up like studios and efficiencies
Mhm.
in the middle of a single family home neighborhood.
Possibly.
I understood that the form, and this is, I mean, the problem, Libby, I keep having, that the conversation keeps changing. You know, initially you were talking about the form of the houses, that we're missing a certain form of housing. But if I'm reading the code and the potential for the code correctly, this is the Wild West at this point, where somebody can put, like, I don't know, 6 studios next to us and put like 300-foot studios.
So the
Tokyo-
question is, yeah, and so it still has to be within the envelope that a house, that somebody could put up a single family house to that size. It's not going to be bigger than a house that could be built there. Okay.
We understand the setbacks,
Okay.
but also if somebody can put 6 studios without any restrictions on a 5,000 square foot lot.
Well,
that
there
is
are restrictions. There are all the restrictions that are there right now, and there are a few more coming, which we'll get to in a minute on parking and trees. Okay. So there are restrictions, and then you're a builder. I'm not sure how many builders are gonna build that in your area with that's like 6 bathrooms or 12 bathrooms in one build. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I kind of doubt that would be built. I don't know, but I don't think that that's something that would tend to be built. But we don't know. All I do know is it would be within the envelope.
We have enough spite houses in Arlington to tell you that if it's buildable, somebody's going to come along and try to build it.
They may
And if
try, but
it's-
they have to fit within the current envelope and the current restrictions, which is we've got more. So maybe we want to move on from this slide and then we can come back.
Let Sarah and Diane get to their questions. Sarah, go ahead.
So Libby, this is something that I struggle with, is the R levels of a district and the lot size. And for example, I have an R6, but a very large lot.
Yeah,
So-
you would be an exception. Yep.
And so is the density that would be allowed based on the, let's say, a 10,000 square foot lot in an R6, because you can have a higher density in an R6 than you can an R10. So my concern is the manipulation, and I think there's a perfect example of this on Jackson Street, where somebody went to a crazy, well, everybody knows that one. But anyway, because that was an R6, they could do a lot more density on a large lot. So I do have that concern that there isn't a balance between the actual lot size and the R districts, and the smaller lots, the smaller Rs with larger lots can get a huge amount of density. Whereas if I had an R10, I couldn't do that.
Well, you still have, yes, it will vary by the size of the lot and the density, but you still can't go more than 6 units, and you still have to be within the envelope of what a single family house could build. And I know I've heard in a number of neighborhoods, people are pretty upset about the size of the single family houses. Do people mind if I turn off my camera? I realize I may need to plug it because I wasn't going to use this device. I'm not sure it's charged up. I think I need to plug it up so I don't get, is that all right? I'll turn off my camera and plug it in. Okay.
And Libby, I just want to clarify to Brian's comment in the chat. You're defining transit proximate as meaning proximate to metro, not bus specifically.
So there are 2 different definitions, and we're going to be voting on that. I think of it as metro rail, but some people, or at least maybe really premium bus. Other people are saying any kind of bus.
Okay,
That's one of the things we're actually going to be voting on.
got you. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Yeah.
And,
What's a premium bus?
That's what we're gonna be getting on. Well, there's one down in Crystal City right now. And we are working on that down the pike where you'll have headways of every 6 minutes or so. And they will get signal prioritization and things and move faster than regular buses.
Okay,
Improve bus service. Hope we get it. Yep. Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Diana, you there?
Yeah, Libby, I just got a quick question for you, and it's based on something. I can't stay very long on this,
Uh-huh.
unfortunately. But, you know, some of these big companies are coming in. You'd mentioned that some of these units may not be sold. They may go as rentals, and we've got a lot of, not a lot, but I'm seeing some big companies coming in and purchasing duplexes in my area and then renting them out. And the trouble is they are not located, the landlords are not located locally,
Right,
and there's no oversight.
right.
And,
And we can't, yeah, go ahead.
And well, hear me out. And my concern is if there's going to be any kind of statute in the works that, you know, that kind of, if you're going to go through with something like this, that it makes it not possible for these companies to just swoop in, buy all this stuff up, live out on the West Coast, not have anybody managing them and overlooking them, and having them, the property values go down because they're not being taken care of in a concerted way, and then and allowed to do that. I'm just concerned about the way it's going to be taken care of.
I hear you. I hear you. So in some ways, I have some of those same concerns, which is part of the reason that, which we haven't gotten to. I've been advocating for a pretty low cap and some other guardrails that should help prevent too much from happening too quickly. I think it's unlikely economically to have that happen so much in Arlington because Arlington's already so expensive. I believe I've seen articles, which actually are very disturbing, not for us here, but it will get to us in the reverberations over time. Places in like Alabama and Texas and places where people have gone to get cheap houses because they can get a start on owning a home somewhere in the country, and that's where they go. But those are all getting bought up like huge tracts of houses, and they're not being offered for sale anymore. They're for rent by large companies that figure that people need a place to live, and they can just keep putting the rent up and up and up. And that's taking out that lower rung for people to get a start on owning a home. That's a big worry. Worried about that a little bit here, not as much because again, it's so, the land and stuff is so expensive here. It doesn't make economic sense for somebody to do that, but that doesn't mean they won't. So one of the things I want to track, I do want to have monitoring, and I think we're going to get monthly reports about what gets, permitted, not permitted, but what comes in to get built. There are permits to build, not to be able to make us, excuse me, you do have to get some permitting when you're going to build. When they come in for that, if it's missing middle, keeping track of it and who is the owner and what are they doing on it and following it to find out what is exactly happening. Because I think it's a legitimate concern. I don't know that that's a major concern here, but we won't know. And we are not allowed to tell people that they have to rent or they have to buy. We can't do that. We're not allowed to do that.
Right, but don't you think that if you find that the hope of being able to sell these units does not come to pass, and then you're looking as far as revenue to turn them into rentals, it seems like Arlington County would be very open to having a big company come in and purchase them and then work something out with the county so that they could possibly, under affordable housing grant type thing, to give a few of them as a place where someone could start a home. And that's, you see, my concern is that it's going to end up getting way far away from here. And if we don't have those stop gaps in place, then when you try to later on stop that, it's they are very, very quick. They have a lot of money. they are very happy to help a place by buying them. So
Mhm.
I hope that the county
I-
would do.
I
something.
agree.
Well, and I have a question to add on to that. I mean, how is that any different than single family housing? Isn't that the same concern for all existing housing types as well? Like that shouldn't be limited to how many family housing it is, right?
Well, all I'm saying is what I'm seeing and what I'm
I'm
seeing.
just saying, like,
Yeah.
we're absentee bad landlords could be single family houses as
Oh,
well as.
sure. Oh,
two-family.
sure.
So
No
it's like,
doubt.
Wait a
it shouldn't be,
minute, wait.
it shouldn't be
that-
limited to this type of housing.
The
Well-
county data shows that not to be the case. Sorry. If
Well,
you go
I'd
in-
like Libby to say that.
Yeah, except I'm not seeing, what data are you looking at, Terry? And I'm not quite clear
I'll
what the
go
data
get
is.
I'll go get it, but
Yeah, I'd like Libby to say that.
I got it from the county's website. And the estimates were ridiculously that most single family homes, the majority were owner occupied. So let me get the numbers. Hold on.
Yeah, they are. You know, and then the other thing is we might have, you know, one of the things that might happen, particularly with 6 units, you could see if you had or 4, say, you could see you could have a duplex that are kind of nice sized duplexes. And then maybe each duplex has like a studio apartment in it. And the people own the duplex, rent out the studio apartment to help them cover the mortgage on their duplex. So that you could have a mixture of ownership and rental. So there's that kind of possibility in there as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah. In many ways, we don't, I am viewing this as a pilot. I know it feels like a huge, and it is a big change, but we're putting a lot of guardrails on, maybe not quite as many as I would like, but we're going to be monitoring it and it's going to be back again. And we'll be talking about it for, you know, we're going to be talking about it again and probably pretty soon. I would say in 2 years, it'll be back. So in some form or other.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I have the numbers. Brian, this came from the housing, it's called Profile 2022. It was based on census data. It's from the county's website. Single family detached owners occupying the unit, 86.8%, 13.2% renters. Condos, 66.5% owner occupied, 33.5% renters. Single family attached. Libby, does that mean duplexes to you?
Maybe, or townhouses.
Okay, 70.9% owner, 29.1% renter. That's from the county's.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question. My question is, why are these houses more likely than a normal house to have an absentee big business out of town landlord? There isn't.
Right. I think probably not. Although what we're facing right now is just, which I think, you know, as I was talking about what's happening in Texas and Alabama. I mean, the world is changing. And, you know, they often have, so we've had a lot of changes. I saw Sarah's request that we go through everything and then go back, but I would like to continue like this and then we can go back and start through again. So we'll do a second pass. So pass.
We'll jump into those at the end, but
Yeah.
for everybody's time, let's keep going here. So now we're
Yeah,
gonna
let's just keep going. So this one should be quick. I'm pretty sure this is lot coverage allowances for regular families, single family homes. You get a little extra for a porch and a garage. You can do that over and above the thing, and we're gonna and then the thought is that we should allow that extra space for a missing middle house, but they don't have to do the garage or the porch. And I think where I am and Christian is, and probably the rest of us is, it's just gonna be just like a single family house. So it's gonna be 4A, just the same kind of allowances. So this could have I don't think they're gonna want to do a detached garage, but they could, and they could do a front porch, but just like for a single family home now. Okay. Parking. Yes, this one gets pretty confusing. I think here, let me look at my notes. I've written down where I think we're going to end up. Yeah, a lot of this depends on how you again define transit proximate and transit, which we went over quite a bit. I am comfortable with a minimum of 1 space per every unit. And I think I've got a majority for that, except within like a 1/4 mile of metro rail. then 0.5 I'm comfortable with. I think we will end up at something like that. I don't think anybody's interested in doing the parking survey idea. I don't think we're gonna do that. And I don't think anybody's gonna say no minimums at all, or if they are, they're not gonna be a majority of the board. So I think we will have a version of 5A with a minimum of 0.5 for transit proximate, and then that's the definition. Is it a quarter mile or a half mile? Is it Metro Rail or is it Metro Rail and Metro Bus? I hope we will get down to a pretty minimum so that it's Metro Rail and it's a quarter mile. And then everybody else has to have at least one space for a per unit.
Libby,
And
can I-
no reduction on parking survey, no survey thing.
Can you define what 0.5 of a space looks like?
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like a parking space is what it looks like. And if you have if you've got 6 units, you've got 3. If you've got 2 units, you got 1.
Gotcha. Okay. I was like, what if I drive a Mini Cooper versus an SUV?
That too. You could probably get away with that and like design a special, whatever, but yeah.
Gotcha. Jackie,
Just to be clear, county is leaning toward 5A right now. Is
No,
that
that's where I am, and I think a majority of the board, but I'm not sure. And in fact, I will get to in a minute what's going to be advertised isn't the right word. There's Christian is working as chair. He is working on putting out what was going to be up on the screen as we vote through, and that when that comes out, which hopefully will be Friday or Monday, so about a week away from the meeting, that will be probably where Christian thinks the majority of the board has mostly settled. So you can see what that comes out to be.
and you're
but
voting
we want-
5A, just so we know what you're leaning, 5A?
Yeah, I'm leaning 5A, and I'm leaning with transit proximate being a quarter mile from Metro Rail.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Okay.
You know, I have to admit, with the parking is ridiculous because everybody I know basically has 2 cars.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're putting up these places with 6. Okay, all right, let's just say it's 2 people are just splitting the house, they just need to rent. Okay, that right there is, if you put a 6er in there, you're gonna have at least 12 cars. Where are you gonna put 12 cars? I mean, like around here, where I live, it's like, when you go down the street, one car's gotta move in order to let the other car go by. Okay, you've got, when you think of like Buckingham, I mean, not Buckingham, Fillmore Gardens, they don't have enough parking. They're all over the place. I just don't see how how people are going to have 2 cars. And, and I think that regardless of this no car diet, I mean, this diet thing, it's ridiculous. Everybody's going to want their car. They
So
might
we're allowing 1 car. There will be 1 space. There'll be 1 car per unit. We'll have a parking space in almost all situations. And I will say, I live in Fairlington where I've got 1 parking space. And at one point, which was a crazy point in my life, there were 3 cars associated with my house. We had to park on the street. It's hard to find parking, but we did it. And my daughter and my mother are over in Douglas Park where you have to weave in and out and when it's really tight. I understand, but it's certainly possible. And I think you will have fewer people that buy houses. They're going to be thinking about where they're going to put their cars. And I don't know if they're going to, either rent or buy in a place where it's pretty clear they can't, if they've got a bunch of cars, they don't have a place to put them. That's somewhat the market kind of forcing people to decide where they want to go. But I hear your concern, and a lot of people are expressing it. I'm pretty comfortable with making sure there's at least 1 space per unit.
even like Penrose Square, a lot of people don't want to live in Penrose Square, don't want to pay the amount it costs to park. Okay, so they're parking on the streets. Okay, so I mean, like, and that's not fair to them. They should be able to park in the parking lot, where they live. And so I don't know. I just think I think that's just, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You got 6 units and then you're gonna have at least 12 cars. Where are you gonna put those cars?
So that's taking the absolute maximum. Maybe there will be one house like that. I don't think over time there's going to be a whole lot of them, and you're assuming everyone's going to have 6 units. I think what we're actually going to see mostly is duplexes. I could be wrong, but I think that's mostly what we're going to see. And then you're assuming that every one of those 6s will have 2 cars. I think that's not necessarily something you can assume is possible. But I think you're assuming the absolute worst everywhere, and I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well,
But
if
I
you
hear
have a family that has a duplex even, or you have a family, okay, you've got kids, right? Eventually they're teenagers, they're gonna be driving. And you know, in this area, you know, it's like, oh yeah, my kid has to have the car too. So mom has a car, dad has a car, now kid has a car.
yeah, I hear you. As I told you, I have 1 parking space here, and at one point there were 3 cars involved with this household. It's crazy, but it worked.
Hmm.
I see you, Brian. You've got 0 car. Good for you. Okay, should we go to the next one? Tree requirements, all right? And I was checking, so what, where we will end up, I think, I hope, is it won't say up to 4 shade trees. It'll say a minimum of 4 shade trees for sites with 2 to 4 and a minimum for 8 shade trees for sites with, 5 to 6 units, so that there's a tree requirement, which actually is more than we can require for single family homes. And one question that one of you may ask, but I have asked already, but I don't have the answer yet, is I think a shade tree, when you, by definition, has a certain amount of space associated with it, because shade trees start out very small and don't need much space, but if you wait 20 years, suddenly they're really big, and we don't want to have them planted so close together that in 20 years, when they're full size, so they have to start getting chopped down because we didn't leave enough space for them. So I'm checking on what the space requirement is for a shade tree.
Jared, do you have any comment on the tree requirements?
Yeah, so it's shade tree absolute value where there is no canopy requirement, because I remember the Arlington Arborist had a schedule of different tree types and their associated canopy. So that's not going to be the case.
I'm sorry, I was reading something in the chat. I apologize. Say it again.
Real quick,
Canopy, yep.
So the arborist has a schedule of different types of trees and the associated canopy of that, like the expected canopy at maturity. So when you're saying shade trees, that can be any tree?
No, because
that's
some
not
trees
how
don't count as
usually
shade
have
trees. Some trees don't
Right.
count as shade trees.
But shade
I
trees,
don't know.
not all shade trees are made equal either.
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking. The real case here is how much space does each of those trees need? And that's what I've asked, and I don't have the answer for that yet.
So they can
Well,
elect,
this also-
missing middle homes can elect to have a shade tree of the minimum size, and that's still going to be okay. While
Yeah, depending on
single-family
what a minimum
home
size,
builders-
what's the definition of a minimum sized shade tree? I don't know that, so I'm gonna find that out.
Right, but that's not the standard right now for single family homes. That will require a plan with the arborist with specific tree types and canopy calculations. If
I don't
I'm going to
think-
build a single family home right now, I need to send it through my engineer to give me an exact canopy calculation at maturity.
Yes, I think I will ask about it. I think the exact canopy will be associated with these 4 shade trees, and I will ask what that is because I don't have that number yet.
All right, thank you.
This is a fairly newer one that I got on. Jeff,
Okay.
in answer to Jeff's question in the chat, which is what distracted me for a bit, if a duplex is what you expect and feel is feasible, why? Okay, so a duplex is what I expect mostly to happen. I'm not saying that other things aren't feasible. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to make a guess as to what I think will happen most, and I think it probably will be duplexes to fourplexes. That's just what I'm expecting. I'm not saying the others aren't feasible.
Anybody else, any comments on tree requirements?
Yeah, so Libby, does this mean that the tree canopy requirement would be the same for multifamily as it would for single family? Because currently multi is 10%.
Yeah, no, it's not, it's multi. This is what we have here. So it's not considered, 5 to 6 are multi, but that's 8 shade trees. So it may be a little less than what you could have, certainly for, I don't have all of the requirements memorized.
Yeah, I mean, this is complicated, very complicated, because I think that the Chesapeake Bay ordinance has a set of parameters, but also the state of Virginia. I think this might be in some bit of a legal.
No, I ran this by the lawyer.
Okay.
I'm sure if there are, like, if it's a riparian area, a protection area or something like that, right?
Yeah, resource
That Chest Bay, then that would work, that would apply and
Okay.
obtain. But originally when this was put forth, the staff had 1 tree per site.
Right, right.
So this
Oh,
is an
more is
improvement.
better. More is better.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry, I don't have all our tree requirements.
that's
No.
okay. All
Yeah.
right.
So this one, this will be a good one. Development cap.
Yes. All right. So I think where we're gonna end up on this one is probably the 58 permits. Oh, this slide is different from the one I gave earlier. Okay, it's been updated. Let me just scan it real quick. Yeah, so we're gonna figure out a distribution for the permits. Christian has a kind of a formula. I think we're probably gonna do the 58. I would like to keep it down at 21, I think is what staff was saying they were expecting per year. But I think I've lost that battle. So I think we'll set it at 58, but it will be distributed around the county by zoning district. So the R5s, R6s, R8s. And then there'll be sort of a formula after that. And I have not, I don't know if those calculations have been finished yet. I think that's where we're going to end up. I think we will probably have the cap sunset in 2028. I think that's probably where the board is going to be. And so it will be back before us.
So it'll be a new round of voting in 2028.
Excuse me?
There'll be a new round of voting on a different number of allocated permits in
Oh,
2028.
only if the board brings it forward. I think my colleagues want to set it as a sunset and somehow think that it'll just quietly sunset and then there won't be any limit and that nobody in the county will notice. I think everybody will notice and I expect to be
notice.
talking about it. So I'm not worried about a sunset, particularly because whatever we do, we're going to be talking about this again, in my humble opinion.
Have there been other numbers of, the current 7A and 7C set the cap at 58 permits per calendar year? Have other numbers been floated, either those for or against the proposal?
Oh, yeah, I had
No.
floated, I had wanted 20 because that's what our staff said was going to be built in a year, they thought. And most of the, when we answered responses to people concerned about X, Y, or Z, we would say, or the schools were trying to figure out if this would be a thing, they were going on the assumption that it would be about 20 per year. So I was very comfortable setting a cap at that. But people are hoping, I think, that we'll get more. So we'll find out. But nobody else was with me on the 20. I think there's some assumption that in those 58, some of them will be retrofits and some of them will be new.
Gotcha.
Libby,
Yeah.
Sarah wrote in the chat that the Transportation Commission recommended no new curb cuts,
Yes.
but
Oh,
that
yeah.
wasn't advertised.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And it's
Oh.
coming up, I think, on a slide. I think it's on a slide that's about to come up. Yeah, let's keep going. I think it should be on a slide that's coming up unless it got removed. Okay. Non-conforming. So I apologize, I'm quiet because I was going on the title page says that this was Christian's presentation in February 1, 2023, I think. These are new slides, so somebody's updated it, and so that's what ended up getting sent in, so I haven't seen this slide. Apologies.
If you want to go, we can skip this, go on the next one, and you may.
Yeah, let me just, it'd be good for your board member to be familiar with what's here. Hold on just a second. Exempt from the use permit requirement, apply existing, I think I'd go with 8B, apply the existing use permits. Yeah, I think that's where we'll be. Yep. Maximum gross floor area. I think we've decided, I don't think we're gonna do maximum gross floor area. I think that's a big issue that we may talk about another time, but it's not the way we handle single family housing. So I'm not interested in doing anything with maximum gross floor area. I don't think we'll be there. I haven't heard anybody excited about it. I
This
think we'll
one is very consequential, Libby. And people may not realize it. But this would take, let's say, a semi-detached duplex and turn it into a 4-family dwelling.
Yeah, I think where we're leaning right now is 12A. And I think that's maybe where we're going to come down. I haven't talked about that a lot with my colleagues yet, in part because we just haven't had time to really sort of think it through and see what might happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on accessory dwelling?
No, I was hoping you would be leaning on that one because that's like cheating on a math test to me.
I hear you.
We got some 2-car garages in the neighborhood and elsewhere. I'd love to rent out and turn into a studio.
Uh-huh. Well, you can right now as an accessory dwelling unit, you can, but to do that in combination with a missing middle is something different.
Alex, you can move in my shed.
Excellent. That's all I can afford in this area.
I have a big shed.
Well, I'm tiny, so it works out. I think this is the last slide here.
Yeah, and this one is to get it at talking about, which we haven't done much, which is good. A lot of people have are thinking of missing middle as actually they keep kind of conflating it with affordable housing planning. And while they're certainly related, the more housing you have, economics tells you the more you have of a resource, it'll mitigate price increases, I think, or bring them down some. But this isn't missing middle or expanded housing options is not meant to be really about affordable housing. We're hoping to get some flexibility for people. So then we're listing here some other things that we're doing, including, as we've touched on a little bit, somebody else talked about the issue of big companies coming in a home ownership study. So we are going to be trying to look at that and figure out what kind of home ownership possibilities we have, but that's down the line a bit. And senior housing affordability also. Okay, so those are studies that we have. It's just that it's not like we're not thinking about these things, but they're separate.
So Libby, can we just clarify, because I think people are still so confused because of the initial rollout when a lot of things were stated on the phase 1 and phase 2 things. And people are still confused about retaining diversity, attracting new diversity, the type of income possibly that it would take to afford a unit in a 6-plex. And I actually did the math. I said, okay, if you have a 6-plex and it's 8,000 square feet, it's 1,300 square feet per unit, which easily is a 2-bedroom.
Oh yeah, it's a
combination of different sizes, right? Maybe
Yep,
a 3, a 2, a 2, I don't know. But, like, did staff run any more numbers as to affordability for the cheapest one and like the most expensive one? Because they did that initially as per the consultant, but I haven't seen anything new estimates of numbers and about diversity.
I think because they realized, although this is just an assumption, the deal with with houses, it's location, 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 right? So a little tiny house in the middle of Paris or something, or DC or Arlington in a good location, is really expensive. A little tiny house in rural Maine or Kentucky doesn't cost much. It's the location. So it's really hard to say if it's and you can have a little studio pied-à-terre or whatever, in the middle of Paris, and it costs a fortune. None of us can afford it. But if it's here, you maybe can. So it's very hard to say what it's going to actually cost. And I think that's part of the reason I want to make sure we do really good kind of monitoring and keeping track of what's happening and start to get an idea of what is getting built where and what's affordable and how much of it's to buy and how much of it's to rent. And that will inform how we want to tweak things in the future, because I'm sure we're going to be making adjustments as we move forward.
But Libby, that's why I agree with you on the original cap that you had said, which was 20, because that gives you the ability in a micro environment to make those adjustments like way more quickly. If you can get the data on the 20, then you can make an adjustment to the next.
Yeah, well, the 58, the deal with the 58 is that will include dispersion around the county. So that makes me a little less concerned about it. So it's not all in one spot. It's going to have to be dispersed. And that is helpful, I think, for, as I say, just kind of getting us started on it and seeing what's happening without making huge changes.
And then can you answer one more pertinent question? I
Can
know
try.
that the board was advised by your attorney that you can unwind this if it blows up on us.
Uh-huh.
Is that what you still think is true?
Yes, 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 and yes, yes, and yes. Yep.
But not
I've
a
asked, I
permit.
keep getting the same answer back.
Yeah.
And if you look at what we did with townhouses were permitted in like the 1920s or so. And then in the 30s or 40s, they took townhouses off and said you couldn't build them anymore. And then we said we could build them. And then just recently, the county board had areas where they said you can't do them anymore. And people were upset about it. Developers and builders were upset about it, but nobody sued us, or they could sue us, but nobody's going to win. So it's one of the few things that local government in Virginia can do, and that's land use. So it's as certain as anything can be in this uncertain world.
Okay, so
think.
as you're taking shape and you're kind of gelling together and figuring out what options you like, and you think you're gonna push that out a little bit before the 18th so people can see it?
Yes, I think Christian will be doing that. And I meant to text him today and ask him when he thought he would have that done by. I noticed in one of my conversations with him, with another group of civic associations, he had said he hoped to have it out about a week ahead of time. So we'll see. Right, I'm going to take a risk and turn on my camera. If the things don't work, then we'll.
So Carolyn had a quick question. She on the unwinding issue, any unwinding would be prospective. Is that correct? Or unwinding, I'm sorry.
I'm not, what did you say?
It's in the chat here.
Oh, let me look at the chat. You mean unwinding something? Okay,
Unwinding, I'm sorry, unwinding issue.
hold on. Let me look. Let me look.
Sorry, sorry. This is Carolyn. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt with this, but unwinding. Sorry, yes, unwinding.
I love
No, I
unwinding.
just meant. And first of all, I appreciate Libby your being here and discussing with all of this, and dealing with the chat and all of these things on the side. No, I just meant you said that yes. That someone else asked, could it be unwound? I guess.
Yep.
And so I think all that means is, what that means is, if whatever decision is made now, then those decisions are going to be in effect for some period of time, and that will likely result in some changes of development and housing and building. But but it doesn't bind, actions of, in the future to then say, okay, we are no longer from X point forward going to allow these changes. But it's not as if, it will kind of undo anything that was.
No, once something
done
is
already.
built, you can't, if it's legal when it's built, you can't, that's why we have things called
Absolutely.
non-conforming, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the way it
absolutely.
works. And this is where politics will play. I assume everybody here is quite aware that we have an election coming up for county board, and there are 2 seats. And it takes 3 votes to do anything. So, and I expect some of that election to be about missing middle, although I'm hopeful once we vote here, and people kind of take a deep breath, they'll realize it's not quite as much of a concern, but I'm sure that people will be continuing to think about that. So it's who you've got as your elected leaders. I don't think we're going to want to bring it up again, but the fact is, if we had the kind of election where the board, like the whole board turns over in a year, this happens in some places. It could be that the whole board would, if that had happened, it gets turned over, and then the board decides we don't want to do this. And with 1 month's advertisement, it goes back to where we were before. I mean, we could do that. I don't think that we will, and I hope we don't. But you certainly can unwind it. But once something's built, you can't tell them they can't build it anymore if it was legal when it was built.
Libby, can we go back just one to the one you didn't want to talk about? And
Okay.
I just don't understand a little bit of it, and that's why. Alex,
Yeah, all right, we'll do that. Yeah.
one
last
about
video-
gross floor area or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can't, no, so I don't think any of us, that's a whole different way of we don't do that with single family houses, gross floor area. We do it with, the big buildings that we do, like JBG, these big, huge, tall
Yeah.
office gross floor, and we look at that.
So
But we don't do that for houses, and I'm trying to keep it
does
more the
that
way.
mean, Libby, does that mean that a 6 unit could be bigger than 8,000 square feet? If you don't do A or B? What does that mean? I guess.
If we, it means it's still, the floor area could be whatever fits into the 35-foot height, the setbacks, et cetera, the envelope of a single family house.
Okay, and then here's an off the cuff question. Let's say somebody in our neighborhood, which is R6, and they have a 20,000 square foot lot. Could they build more than one missing middle unit on there? Could they build 3 sixplexes?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I don't think there's any way they would fit that.
Just to answer Terry, from a technical perspective, they technically can subdivide, create a missing middle subdivision with 3
Oh,
different
yes,
missing
right,
middle. Yes,
right,
they
Hassan,
can.
yes. They could subdivide so that it fits the R6. You're talking about an R6. You're talking about a 20,000 square foot lot in an R6.
Yes.
Yeah, so then they could subdivide to get it down to, because you could subdivide it down to the R6 zoning.
Well, have you guys talked any about these townhouses that are detached?
Excuse me?
You know, the townhouses that are detached
Uh-huh.
that could be on 16 square foot, 16 width lots? Is that a serious consideration?
I don't really understand your question. I'm so
So
sorry.
there was in the staff report, they described detached townhouses.
Okay, that'd be like
Each lot would be 16, a width of 16 feet.
Mhm.
So you could subdivide R6 into 3 lots. So they're not paying a HOA, but they still have to fit into the, 8 foot, 10 foot.
Right,
Right.
right.
But
Right.
that they are detached is a bit of an oddity, because the lots would be 16 feet across, which is super weird. That would be, the
Yeah, I think
townhouse
it's
would be 12 feet across. It's just bizarre. Have you guys talked about that?
no,
No.
not, or I haven't. So.
Okay, Carolyn?
So do we want to talk about betrayal, or do we want to talk about some other things?
Yeah, let's get Carolyn's question, then we'll go to the chat.
Okay,
All right.
Carolyn, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I have a question. My understanding is that there are some areas in Arlington that have, I'm not quite sure what the word is, whether they're, I don't know, homeowners association or within the lease or the land grant, there's sort of reservations in the deeds or whatever it is. I do not live in one of those that would preclude changing of zoning and to allow for anything outside what is currently allowed within whatever that development area is. So for
Yeah.
example, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, do those sort of private covenants override this? And so would they be excluded from the expansions of the housing opportunities that would be permitted?
No,
under
no. The local zoning takes precedence if it's a condo association that owns their own land. So like I'm in Fairlington, which is all missing middle. The land here is owned by Fairlington. So we can do what we want to within it, according to the zoning. It has to be within the zoning rules. So for example, there are covenants out there still, I think, in existence, some places where Jewish people can't buy homes, or people of color you can't sell your home to a person of color. Those don't.
Yep.
Those don't.
Libby,
Yes,
that's
there
disingenuous.
absolutely are.
Libby, that's disingenuous because the Supreme
But-
Court already struck that out. So that's completely disingenuous for you to mention that. But those covenants, people have bought into those neighborhoods based on those covenants that only one house would be built on a single family lot.
So you're jumping to a different issue. I'm not being disingenuous. I'm simply giving examples where.
Well, to raise racism, I don't want to be called racist because I own a home in this county.
I'm
Libby.
not.
tired of that.
I'm sorry.
I'm
Can I
not.
just go back to my question? I do understand your point about the other things. I am not talking about those types of covenants, and I
Okay,
And
you're talking
I'm
about-
just
I'm just saying-
asking for a point of
Talking
information.
about the
I am
covenants say
saying that,
one house on one single family home on a lot. That's what the covenants have said.
like
And that's what people have bought into.
Right, right. And that was with the zoning. Once that changes, the zoning will take precedence over that.
So you're ignoring what hundreds and thousands of community people have already invested in. You're ignoring that.
Not ignoring it. We're having a lot of discussion and talking through it. Things change all the time. Zoning changes all the time. And there's been a lot of change throughout time. And this is just, it's another one. And we're working it through the political process. And we're trying to work it through as carefully as we can. I actually think it will make things better for everyone, although I understand how some people don't think that's the case.
and like, I'm sorry, can I just say that I was asking merely as a point of information and clarification.
Yeah.
Without trying to make a point either way. And Hazim has your own, picking up on this, so don't, you have your own thing, but I was just asking because my understanding is that those folks who are in those situations do believe that the private covenants in whatever it is would preclude, even if the zoning permits it, would preclude those things. But that was all.
My
that
understanding
was
is
just
no,
it.
and
So-
this is one I have not asked our lawyer. I will ask that. I will put that as a question because it's come up a couple of times. I will put that out as a question. I'm so sorry I brought up those other examples. They were just simply examples. I won't ever bring them up again because it just gets people upset. There's just private zoning does not supersede the government zoning. That's my understanding, and I will double check that.
Did that answer your question, Carolyn? Okay, all right. We'll take
Yes,
Alex, if
sorry,
I- if I
sorry.
may-
Yes, it does. And Hazim may have some other issues, but yes, it does answer my personal question. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah.
Libby, I have 0 questions, but I have a request and I have a suggestion. My
Mhm.
request is, would it be possible in a short, in the next few days, to create a table side by side, looking at the governing, the code for single family homes and the missing middle? Because we would like to get a clear picture on what exceptions are given to the missing middles, whether it's a tree canopy or parking or area, etc. So creating, maybe we're wrong about this. Maybe, it's very similar, or as strict of a code as a single family, but there is a community concern that missing middle is being treated like royalty right now, but for political reasons. And we're giving them every exception in the book.
Okay, and my understanding is there are no exceptions. So I will ask if we can do that, where it changes from single family zoning. I will ask to see if we can do that
And
quickly. I
which
think staff
leads
can do
me-
that quickly.
Which leads me to a suggestion. Now, I know for a fact that at least one lot I'm familiar with is waiting for missing middle to potentially develop.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there are many I do not know about. Is it possible to limit the first year of missing middle, not 5 years, first year to your suggested 20 or 21? And there are 2 reasons for that. For one, it'll give county a chance to absorb what ideas are coming through, what suggestions are coming through. But for 2, you're already short on permit reviewers at county and engineers. And this is the cool new thing. So a lot of people will be expecting delivery on that. And these reviewers are not used to these new properties. So that is going to suck a lot of air out of the reviewing office for the permit reviewing office. And if you're going to throw 58 to 60 permits at them in that year, and everybody expecting those permits to be moved quickly, that's very unfair to the other developments in county.
I hear you. I don't know that it'll be 50. I don't know how many will come. Yes, we could limit it the first year to 20 or 21, which is what I wanted to do. I think I have 1 vote out of 5 and that will not get us anywhere. So I think you probably bring up a good point.
Maybe the reviewers can back you up on this, because there's a real concern that this is going to come in, because maybe the first year you're going to get all 58, the next year you're going to get 3. But people that have been waiting for missing middle are going to submit the first year. They're not going to wait a year or 2.
I hear you.
Yep.
I hear you. We'll see. I'll throw that out and let people know. I think that may be an issue we'll just have to deal with if it happens. Again, I don't think I have the votes to change that.
Thank
But
you.
thank you. It's a good point. And it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
not been asked or thus far that you would like Libby to address before we close out?
Yes, me, Jackie. Okay,
Jackie,
back to, I was, more housing, again, means more kids. Your little darlings need to go to school, okay? I'm in the school system. We're so packed, it's not even funny. When Whitefield was built, it opened in 2013. My son graduated 2015, at which point it was at capacity then. So you keep on talking about building more and more and more, as if it's just single people that are moving in. It's not. They've got kids. We have to school them. Okay, and so you keep on talking about more housing, but you're building schools that when they're built, they're already at capacity. So I don't get this.
So I hear you. I think actually the school system population has been, if it's not going down, it's only holding steady. That increase, the pandemic put a real wrench into the number of people going into the schools. So I don't think the capacity for our schools is as big a problem as it has been. And we are building, Amazon is building us a new high school in National Landing, which hopefully will be online by 2027. And I think over the years in the future, and this is just a whole other subject, I think we need to change somewhat the model on how we teach. In Germany, seniors in high school never go inside their buildings because they're out, they've got real world experience. I think there's some different models we could be doing for education other than the model that we have now, which works well for some kids in some such situations, but is really based on a 19th century model. So there's that. Our water treatment plant is at 45, it uses 55% of its capacity. We have almost half of the capacity on our water treatment plant still available to use. So we have that. We've looked at the infrastructure. I don't believe there's going to be a problem with the infrastructure. And some of it is we're going to be getting more people anyway. The question is where they're going to live and how they're going to live and are we going to manage it? And I'm thinking this would be a good way to help manage it and not help manage it and give it more options for people to be here so that we don't end up with nothing but people in 1-bedroom apartments and McMansions and nothing in between. So that's just, yeah.
And I know like Brian mentioned this, I've been following, I was at the December board meeting. I think somebody brought this up. Our corporate vacancy rate. Now I heard numbers, estimates is up as high as 30% for office.
Yes, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely. That's only been going higher and higher as I've heard over the last, several years. And of course, the pandemic exacerbated that, tenfold, I can imagine. But my question is, and this may be simply a code enforcement, building code standards, answer, and it's a redundant question or a rhetorical question rather. Is the county looking at what can be done to convert any of that open office space that hasn't been utilized through the pandemic and the work at home revolution?
Absolutely.
Right now? Absolutely.
Everybody in the country is looking at that looks at these things. DC, Fairfax, the region, Arlington, we are looking at it. And I keep pushing on it so the issue they're concerned about is it's just really hard with the buildings the way they're built. The windows are all on the outside, so inside there are no windows, right? And there's only like one. How are you going to get the bathrooms? You can't redo the plumbing. So there's a question on how to make it so that it's appropriate, at least somewhat appropriate for people to live in. It depends on how the building was constructed. So some office buildings are more easily converted than others. Some you could convert, but it would cost so much it doesn't make sense. And I think we're going to continue to see a lot of examination and change on this. In some office buildings, they may decide to tear down and build up into residences. But right now, everybody's trying to figure out the economics and are people coming back and what's going to happen. So there's just a lot of question, but believe me, many people have thought about that. I keep asking about it. It's a very good thought. It sort of jumps to the mind, right? Because we've got these empty buildings. We need people to be living somewhere. So yes.
And my last portion of that question, I guess more of what I'm trying to get at. Has there been a push for maybe a loosening of any of those kind of restrictions? Like obviously you can't just throw a toilet into the middle of an office space when there's no plumbing there or a shower. It's not going to work. But Are there discrepancies between Arlington, our code, versus that of Alexandria Falls Church, even DC, and what they're trying to do, or the way those buildings are constructed?
I don't know. I think they're similar, and I think there's some general ones. I hear what you're saying. I mean, I have spent a fair amount of time as a tourist, even in my older years, staying like in hostels, right? And you've got, you sleep in a room with, and then you walk down the hall and everybody shares the bathroom, right? So there are those kind of models out there. And I can't answer your question on that one. I assume that they are very similar, and everybody is looking at it. And believe me, if somebody came to this board, and said, hey, we can make this work, we should do it, we'd be all over it.
Gotcha. Thank you. Tony, do you have a question?
Yeah, just quick thing, Libby, I wasn't going to venture into this, but you did.
Tony was trying to ask a question.
Sorry?
Tony was trying to ask a question. Tony Lero?
Oh, my bad. I thought you were asking me.
Tony, I think you're muted. You unmute yourself.
Okay, yes,
Thank
I
you.
have a question related anyway, and I just joined the group, so I'm sorry about it.
That's okay.
Somebody else asked about the schools, and I didn't hear, I wasn't clear about what Libby's answer was. Are we okay with the school? Because as far as I remember, the schools were at capacity 5 years ago or something like that. But I'm not sure what the stat is on that. My kids graduated 4 or 5 years ago, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
So capacity changes. So let me just, a real quick thing on capacity. A school's capacity, you have a certain number of rooms. It's how many students you put in the room. So in Arlington, one of the ways you can increase your capacity is to increase your class size some. All right, so it's a changeable, movable target. And then what I said is, it's my understanding, I have to look at, but the school population, I think, has gone down since the pandemic. And if it hasn't gone down, it certainly hasn't gone up very much. And I need to get some more information on that. But school capacity is not nearly the problem it was, yes, 5 to 10 years ago, when it was really crazy.
But you don't have,
We do collect taxes. I'll just tell, we do collect taxes from vacant office buildings, actually. Just not as much as when they're full. Other
Okay,
question?
yes,
Yeah,
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
go ahead.
Um,
Tony, go
So,
ahead, Darcy.
so what we're saying is, we are okay, and so what we're doing is, instead of having I think it was a 12 kids or 15 kids ratio to a teacher before, we're now having 20 kids to a teacher. And I'm not sure if that's the best situation or not, but
So about 18 or so, I think, is the ideal class size. I'm remembering from my school board days, which is a long time ago. I don't know that we were ever down to 12 or 15. That would be quite ideal. And it changes by classroom. I see the portable classrooms. It also, I am not, all I know is the population has slowed down. Also, it depends on where it is. So we have boundaries. So sometimes you'll have room in one school, but the other school is crowded. So you put portable classrooms there, but I'm not sure where we are, but I don't see school crowding as being a major driver on this. And I don't think we're going to get enough units and enough families and enough kids in the next 5 to 10 years to make a difference, really.
please come to Wakefield then. Come to Wakefield. Okay, we don't have enough teachers. We're looking for teachers. You've got
Teachers is an issue. I agree. Yeah, my
Yeah.
granddaughter's been there. And she's just recently transferred, but she's probably going to come back. So yeah, I'm
And when
familiar.
you're talking about 12 kids, you might be talking about maybe a SPED class, maybe a MIPA class. You're not talking about Gen Ed. Really, get over, get to the schools and take a look. I'd like to find a Gen Ed class that's 12 people.
Yeah.
I
All
mean,
right. So, yeah. So how are we doing? I'm getting tired, frankly.
Okay,
How
I
about you
think,
all?
we're gonna close it out. Darcy, let's go to your question. You'll have the last word.
Yeah, I had just one question. I remember when the accessory dwelling unit program was launched a few years ago, and there was a lot of uproar.
Mhm.
And what I wanted to know now is, with all the different zoning around the county or throughout the county, is the missing middle a new set of zoning to replace existing zoning that already exists? Basically, do we
Yes.
have zoning that exists now that could address these issues being asked about in missing middle?
Oh, good question. So the issue is that right now in about 70%, 60-70% of the county, the land is what's zoned for single family only. You can only build a single family house. Doesn't matter how big it is. You can only build only one family can live there, can have one kitchen. Accessory dwelling units made some change, but that's not a big one. And this is going to allow more than one family to be in a home when it gets built, so that you could have two kitchen, 2-unit with 2 kitchens. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
Yeah, it does. What you're telling me is that this new housing initiative, it needs zoning to apply to it that would be applied throughout the county, and not just in a single neighborhood or specific type of housing. It's to address a broad scope, not anything like cherry picking.
Right.
Phrase.
Spot zoning we're not allowed to do. That's part of the issue there. And to me, I mean, if you step back and just look at it from a little bit of a distance, logically, to have 60 or 70% of the land mass is zoned for only one type of dwelling unit, it doesn't fit in the various needs that people have. Right now I've got my mother is living with my daughter in a single family house that's basically got an interior, it's an accessory dwelling unit interior to the house, because we've turned a single family house into a 2 apartment. So my mother has her own little sort of apartment, which is great. And it's working really well for her aging. But if we hadn't done the accessory dwelling, we couldn't have done, we couldn't do that. And frankly, once my mother goes on, that's my plan, but I don't want to downsize. I want to build large and I want my own kitchen, which right now I couldn't do in that neighborhood. And I think a lot of people are like that. You've got an older couple in a home and they'd like to stay in their home, but they can't manage everything. They could turn it in so that you've got an apartment and have a family that stays there and maybe, helps out with the house and the yard work. Or you've got a young couple that can't really quite afford it and another young couple, and they can go together and buy a house, it's duplex, and make it a duplex and share the cost. And then one person can go, and they have more money, they can buy maybe the whole thing. I'm just kind of talking a lot at you. I'm sorry. I'm just there are so many different permutations in people's lives these days that allowing the housing and where they live to flex some to meet their needs, I think benefits everybody. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Did that even touch on a little bit answering your question?
It does. Thank you very much. I thought that might help other people who might be listening in tonight too, to understand the concept beyond what we currently knew about it. But thank you very much, Libby.
Excellent.
Libby, for joining us this evening. It's almost 8:45, so we're going to close it out. I put my email in the chat, penrosepress@yahoo.com. If there's any outstanding questions that haven't been touched upon this evening, I'm more than happy to put those in with the board. If not Libby, if one of her colleagues, any data requests, anything I can answer, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
And I will ask about the table idea of comparing missing middle and single family. I will ask about that because that might be good for the presentation that we give. I don't know. We'll see if we can pull that off. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Libby. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks everybody for pulling it together. I'm sorry about all the technical stuff and I hope I didn't talk over people too much.
Thank you, Libby.
Bye, Libby.
Yeah, everybody take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.